David, we are coming off a series of conflicts between Jesus and Jewish leaders in Jerusalem. And before that, we had seen a series of predictions by Jesus that he was going to come into conflict. And before that, we even back in chapter 3 saw the Pharisees and Herodians banding together to plot Jesus' death. It's been building for a long time, and in chapter 14 we turn to that. What is the shape of that culmination? What happens?
My sense of this gospel, and this is by no means unique to me, is that this is the point to which we've been moving. That insofar as one can kind of draw a straight line through all the places we've been, the conflicts, the parables, the miracles, it's all driving toward Jerusalem. And it's driving toward the cross, and it's driving toward what that's going to mean for us, for the readers, and for us in the centuries that follow. Just a couple kind of more technical things about the way I think Mark shapes the story. I think, once again, Mark did not make up this story. It's a story he's received. It's a story that's been passed on by word of mouth for a long time. Paul knows the version of it 20 years before Mark. It's been passed on from the time of the crucifixion and the resurrection on. But there are a couple of places where I think, ways in which Mark shapes it, and it helps me to think about it, to think about this shaping. One is that the story of the crucifixion part, not so much the trial, but the crucifixion part, is very much shaped by Psalm 22. And as I go back and read Psalm 22, the first line is, my, why have you forsaken me?" which is the last word Jesus says in all of Mark's gospel. Says it from the cross. There's the dividing of the clothes, there's the casting of lots, there are people walking by taunting. In all kinds of ways, this story gets told as being foreshadowed by Psalm 22. And it may be that in his wisdom or her wisdom, the psalmist somehow knew what was going to happen in God's providence. We've already said God's in charge of this world. That's what we were talking about in chapter 13. Right. It may be that Mark, hearing the story of the crucifixion, tried to find in earlier texts a kind of foreshadowing that could deepen it and enrich it and help us to understand it as part of God's providence. But in either way, I think it's impossible to read Mark's story of Jesus' trial, and especially of his crucifixion, without knowing that Psalm 22 is being reflected there. And in Psalm 22, the picture of the righteous servant who suffers for God and is vindicated by God, though we don't get that so clearly till we get to chapter 16. Right. The other theme, the other device that's very important in Mark all the way through, but especially in the scenes of the trial and the crucifixion, is irony. And I've read books on irony, and I've tried to write paragraphs on irony, and ironically, I never get it very right. But irony, I think, presupposes that there's more going on than meets the eye, or more going on than meets the ear, that there's a deeper truth than what's being portrayed, and that we who are the readers, or we who are the listeners, can understand a truth that the actors, the players, don't actually get. So, just to make the most obvious example, when Jesus is crucified, Pilate puts up above the cross the title, the placard, which says, King of the Jews. Right. And Pilate, I'm sure, thinks that's absolute mockery. You know, what a joke. We're going to call this loser the King of the Jews. But we, who read this through the eyes of faith, through the eyes of Mark, say, Pilate got it right for the wrong reasons. And time after time in Mark's gospel, people are saying things that they think are taunts that turn out to be confessions. So after the trial, they robe him in purple and put a crown on his head and think, some kind of king this is, isn't that silly? And we think, that's the king who suffers. That's the king who bears the crown of thorns. That's the true kingship we've been talking about all along. That's the Messiah Peter didn't know how to deal with, but the Messiah Mark's been telling us all along we're going to get. Or when he's on the cross, people walk by and taunt him, saying, he saved others, he can't save himself. And they think, we got you, Jesus, you schluck. But we think, that's right. That's the Christian faith, that by his unwillingness to save himself, he saved others, including us, that his loss was our gain. And so time after time after time, Mark uses a kind of ironic approach to try to get at what's going on. That's to say how he shapes it. What he shapes, that's trickier. I mean, what's
well, and one of the things in your good comments on Psalm 22 and how it might be shaping this narrative, one of the things that came to mind is We didn't talk in chapter 13, the Apocalypse
Right.
chapter, about how many times these words, "it is necessary,"
Yes,
one Greek
absolutely.
word, comes up, right?
Yeah.
It is necessary that this happen,
Yeah.
and that's the same language that Jesus uses in his Passion
Passion
predictions,
it's
right?
necessary.
When
Son
he-
of Man will suffer many things.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
exactly.
so there's almost between those and the presence of Psalm 22 and the prayer in the garden. If it's possible, let this cup
Yeah, yeah.
pass. There seems like there's a sort of necessity built that Psalm 22 embodies. This is what
There
it has to be,
There is.
right?
This is what has to be.
Yeah.
Unless Jesus chooses not to do it.
Yeah.
That if he is to be who he is to be,
Right.
this has to happen. And I think that means two things at least. It means one, this is God's intent, and we are not going to pause here for a long discussion on what that means theologically because it's huge.
Right.
But it also means that if you read the Scripture closely enough, you'll know this is going to happen.
Right.
So that all the more reason to look to Psalm 22. I'll show you why it's necessary. I'm going to read Psalm 22 to you. If you read it right, you'll see it sees Jesus coming.
Which he does, Mark does much more subtly than Matthew,
Much
who is
more
ready
so.
to
Matthew's always
paste
saying,
the
"This happened to
passage on it,
fulfill."
paste the passage.
But Mark has it as this background, time after time after time.
Which puts me in the room with the people who are listening and asking, would they know Psalm
I don't-
22?
I don't know. What do you think?
And
I
how
have no
much
idea.
how much is this laced into
Yeah.
the way the early Christians
Yeah.
talked about the crucifixion?
Yeah.
That's
It's a great-
one of those good sort of
It's a
mysteries
great
of Mark.
puzzle.
Yeah.
Right.
In the scenes leading up, we probably should gather the dissembling of the disciples that happens at the supper and in the time that follows when they're in the garden.
Yeah.
And the question I have about that is how are we supposed to see what faithfulness looks like to Mark
Yeah.
when so many people end up not
Yeah.
faithful?
Yeah. It looks like the disciples not.
Right.
Faithfulness looks like the disciples not, if you read the Passion story.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it can't possibly be this.
Yeah.
And he sets that up in interesting ways. One interesting way he sets it up is to tell the story of Peter in the courtyard denying Jesus while you've got Jesus inside affirming that he's the Son of Man.
Right.
And you clearly, one answer is faithfulness looks like Jesus.
Right.
And that's a really important answer.
Right.
It's harder to know what faithfulness looks like with the circle around him. And it just compounds what we've seen from the very beginning on, which is they've been dense all along. Now they're cowardly,
Yeah.
right? Jesus says they're going to smite the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. And then by heaven, that's exactly what happens. The minute the shepherd gets arrested, the sheep head for the hills.
Yeah, and I bring it up partly because we are coming off chapter 13 where Jesus told the disciples very clearly what they need to do.
Yeah.
They need to stay awake,
Yeah,
they need to
be
watch.
firm, be
and
strong.
then within the first bit
Off
of
to
14,
Gethsemane.
yeah, they go snoozing and
away,
then they
yeah.
start running away.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so, I mean, I do think for an audience in that ancient living room and for us as audience, it's okay to say Jesus is what we need to be like.
yeah.
But it's hard to take on that character without developing messianic
Yes,
complex,
it's
the Messiah
very,
complex.
it's very tricky.
And
Yeah.
so you may be right. Maybe the best way we can go within this stretch is just don't do what the disciples did. Do the opposite of what the disciples did.
The flip side of it, our hopeful picture of that is the man who stands at the foot of the cross at the end. And he's another of those people. This is a centurion.
Yeah.
And in chapter 15, verse 39, I'm going to try to kind of paraphrase Mark, but I think pretty accurately. When the centurion sees the way in which Jesus died, he says, surely this was the Son of God. And he becomes an illustration of that problem we had earlier, which is great to believe for 32 seconds. We have no idea how that looks over the long haul.
Right.
But for 32 seconds, he does believe.
Yeah.
He does get it right. He doesn't say the cross is the denial of your faithfulness. He doesn't say the cross is a threat to my well-being. He says the cross, dying that way, is the evidence that this man is Son of God.
Right.
And I think it's not unimportant that he sees it. It's not unimportant that he's yet another outsider. He's a Gentile. He's not only not part of the inner circle, he's not part of Israel. Mm-hmm. He's not been part of any of those people who've been either the opponents or the cowards. Yeah. But he does, looking at the cross, say, Truly, this was God's Son.
And he certainly doesn't know Psalm 22.
And
right?
he certainly does not know Psalm 22, right?
Yeah, and so when this comes, I mean, is there any part of you that wishes? Is there any part of you that wishes in this realization or in this recognition of the centurion that he were doing this with Jesus doing the things that he does in Luke? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
I know, yeah.
That Jesus being a little more exemplary,
Yeah.
because what he is on the cross here is desperate sounding. Right?
Yeah.
If you don't know Psalm 22,
Right.
he's desperate sounding, and then he breathes his last, and something happens down at the temple that the centurion can't see.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
The
centurion,
split-
right, the centurion, there's a little miracle going on in the temple where the curtain's torn, but the centurion doesn't see that. The centurion sees how he died. Matthew and Luke both try to play this down. In Matthew, the centurion does see that stuff, right, and says, whoop, miracle.
Yeah.
Truly, this was the Son of God. In Luke, forget that cry of abandonment. My God, why have you forsaken me? I forgive you, I love you, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, everybody thinks he's lovely because he's lovely.
Right.
Why do I love Mark's gospel? Because this is the
Because of
final
that.
moment of honesty.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't just seem to be abandoned. Jesus is abandoned. Lord and Savior, what do you feel? I feel abandoned. Why do you feel abandoned? Because I've been abandoned.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the power of this story is family deserts him, disciples desert him, and then finally God deserts him, and he's left out there hanging all alone. And if you can say hanging all alone, Son of God, in one sentence, you've got the mystery that's at the heart of Mark's gospel, which is that the God who suffers in Jesus Christ is the God who is present for us. Yeah. And that is good news,
It's great news.
Painful as it is.
It's great news, and Mark sticks with it, with this centurion's realization.
Mark sticks with it. Mark
Straight on.
Doesn't blink for a minute.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to soften. He doesn't. It's starting in chapter 8, right? Anybody wishes to come after me?
Here's the cross.
Yeah, here's the cross. I'm going to take it on. You take it on too. There's no sort of whitewash or polishing or airbrushing here. It's just straight on. In the centurion's realization, we of course pick up, as you've said, 1:1, right?
Yeah.
The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the
Son of God. Yeah.
Demons, I know who you are, the Son
Yeah.
of the Most High. God at the baptism and
and
the
transfiguration,
transfiguration. And Jesus in the trial here, right? Are you the Son of the
Blessed.
Messiah,
Yeah, right.
the Son of the Blessed?
Yeah.
Is that, so what is it for a first century reader, what is it for us, that the guy who gets this is the centurion?
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked a lot about how Mark puts this directly and lets somebody get it directly and doesn't need him to forgive anybody on the cross.
Right.
But how is it for this unlikely candidate to get it if I'm in the living room ancient or if I'm in the parlor modern?
It continues the puzzle that I have had. I wrote my dissertation on Mark when I was 30 years old. I am no longer 30 years old. That's how long I've been puzzling about this stuff. It continues that insider-outsider oddity thing, right? That's in some ways the guy who seems most outside, not only not part of my immediate community, not part of all the history of Israel that's led up to this, can say what no insider has said all the way through. Truly, this was the Son of God. And I think that can be threatening to me if I'm proud of my insideness. Right? If I'm sitting there thinking, well, Peter was my father-in-law and I've been part of the inner circle from the beginning, that's threatening to me. If I've always felt outside and wondered whether the gospel can include me, then I find it comforting to discover that a guy just as outside as I feel at the foot of the cross can claim Christ as God's own Son.
Yeah. Maybe I'm brushed into this picture
Maybe
too.
I'm brushed into.
Yeah. And I mean, your insider-outsider is powerful because you mentioned earlier when Jesus is inside, standing up to the charges, Peter's outside denying him. Here, while the centurion is saying, this guy's the guy. This is the Son of God. Peter and Andrew and James and John and the whole gang are off in some locked door somewhere, right? So the likely candidates just aren't the ones who are getting it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's good news in that for all of us who can see that we are outsiders in nature, right?
Exactly.
In nature.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, David.
Thank you.